Hello there friends, welcome back to another episode of Generation Tech. My name is Alan. In the second half of Tales of the Underworld, we're treated with the origin story of Cad Bane, and I absolutely love how they handled it. We've had a lot of looks at the criminal underworld in various shows in Star Wars, from Book of Boba Fett to all the animated series like Clone Wars, Bad Batch, and Rebels. You also have live action films like Solo. And even the cast of Rogue One is filled with criminal elements. But the self-contained story of Cad Bane and his brother from another mother, Nero, really gets the tone and vibe right for the crime genre. Their story actually reminds me a lot of, great coming-of-age mob films like A Bronx Tale or Goodfellas. I'm even reminded of more recent stories like V's in Cyberpunk 2077 or Congo's favorite, Edge Runners. Great anime, by the way, if you haven't seen it. And it's all done in a very minimalistic way, like the rest of Tales, kind of light on story, but big on emotions. The first episode starts off with Cad Bane and Nero as street kids. Not all that different from Han Solo. These two spend the days running around in the streets looking for food anywhere they can, and occasionally stealing it from protocol droids who are out doing their shopping for their masters. Cad Bane and Nero's shenanigans are noticed by a local gangster named Laszlo. He's kind of like the Sonny character in Bronx Tales or the Jimmy Conaway character in Goodfellas. An older gangster who brings the kids in and serves as like a mentor and even a father figure in some ways. These episodes do a really good job of humanizing, Duroizing Cad Bane, who, let's not forget, is a ruthless bounty hunter, known for killing a lot of people. And this guy wasn't just going after regular criminals and jobs, he was hunting Jedi on some occasions. I mean, he even broke into the Jedi Temple archive once and stole a holocron, which is just complete insanity. Cad Bane is a real legend in the bounty hunting community. I mean, this guy even got breathing tubes installed that bypass his throat just in case a Force user tries to choke him. That's real commitment. I mean, not even Mandalorians go that far when it comes to preparing their bodies to fight the Jedi. And so to see Cad Bane as a child, a carefree child who isn't necessarily evil or anything, well, that's kind of jarring. But it is a good reminder that, we all come from somewhere. AI collision software making historically ethical choices? Interesting. It's also interesting that this Laszlo figure, who will become Cad's mentor, is a Duros, who is tall, blue, and lanky, and he's also wearing Cad Bane's future hat. This further breaks down the illusion of who Cad Bane is. It's like seeing Anakin enjoying pod races and hitting on older women. It does make you think about Darth Vader in a completely different light. Now, Cad Bane and Nero eventually are drawn into a life of crime by aiding Laszlo in an attack on a rival gambling den. The two kids act as distraction, while Laszlo and his crew attack from the front. While escaping, the two kids witness their first death when Laszlo guns down one of the thugs chasing them. But then disaster strikes right as the crew is about to get away in their escape vehicle. Nero is caught by the police, and Cad has to leave him behind. Look, it's clear that Cad and Nero don't have many choices in their life. We can't really blame street kids for taking an opportunity when they literally are at the bottom of society, without a family, without a home, without even basic shelter and food. Any direction for these kids, if it means getting off the streets, if it means getting paid, even if it does mean crime, is a step up. I think that's easy to understand, right? And unfortunately for these two kids, that one job with Laszlo, well, it would set the course for the rest of their life. Nero would actually end up joining the very police who caught him, and Cad Bane, well, he would join up with Laszlo. In the second episode, we see an older Cad who is now an active gang member. His voice is kind of strange. It's still Bane's voice, that much is clear, but it's like a prepubescent Bane voice, which again, it shatters the illusion of this tough bounty hunter, I think.
I want to go with you.
I said no.
But that's my old neighborhood. It's where you found me.
Don't make it personal, kid. Take care of operations.
That's actually the last time that Cad would see Laszlo, as he would die on that mission. The local marshal would be responsible, and of course he's also the boss of Nero, who now is a deputy for the local police department. Cad rides into town trying to see what happened to Laszlo, and he actually ends up meeting Nero. And for a second it seems like things are back to normal, the two best bros in the world reconnecting after not seeing each other for, I don't know, a decade or so? But Nero quickly reveals that he is a cop, and that of course immediately drives a wedge between these two. A common theme in Star Wars, for sure. You know, two childhood friends growing up and then kind of going on their own paths. It's interesting how that happens to us, especially when we grow up. You know, we commit to certain jobs, professions, religions, political factions, anti-dolphin humanist cults, and we leave behind the innocence and neutrality of youth. Now, ultimately, it doesn't matter that Cad Bane was pushed into this life. The choices he begins to make as an adult really sets him on a path for no return. And at one point, he is responsible for his actions. He is the one who is pulling the trigger. Cad Bane would carry out an attack in the city in an attempt to draw the marshal out into the open so they could square up and have a good old-fashioned duel. What leads up to this actually reminds me a lot of Revenge of the Sith, specifically Chancellor Palpatine's duel in his office. You know that whole, like, George Lucas quote about Star Wars rhyming?
Again, it's like poetry, so if they rhyme, every stanza kind of rhymes with the last one.
Well, Dave Filoni, the creator of Tales of the Underworld, is famous for doing this in his animated series. A great example of this is the Mandalorian episode in the first season where Mando and Cara Dune train a small village to defend themselves against a bunch of bandits. This, of course, is the same exact story we see in the Clone Wars Bounty Hunter episode where Anakin, Obi-Wan, and Ahsoka team up with 4 bounty hunters to train some farmers to defend their village from pirates. There are 7 warriors in all helping this village, just like the 7 samurai in Akira Kurosawa's film, also named 7 Samurai. George Lucas apparently was a huge fan of his work, and this is a way for George Lucas and Dave Filoni to pay homage to Kurosawa. And in Tales of the Underworld, before Bane and the Marshal square off in their duel, Nero actually has a conversation with the Marshal at their headquarters. They talk about Nero's connection to Bane and what they think Bane is going to do. And right before the Marshal goes out the door to confront Bane, well, he says this to Nero.
You better sit this one out.
You don't have to kill him.
That won't be up to me.
The Marshal understands that it'll be hard for Nero to face an old friend and potentially harm him. He doesn't want his deputy to freeze or be confused about what he has to do here. Just like how Mace Windu asks Anakin to stay behind when he goes and confronts the Chancellor.
Master, the Chancellor is very powerful. You'll need my help if you're going to arrest him.
For your own good, stay out of this affair.
So yeah, that scene with Nero and the Marshal reminds me a lot of Anakin and Mace Windu before that very climactic scene. And then right before the Marshal and Bane square up and are about to shoot, Nero barges in at the last second and interrupts the Marshal, which completely screws up his conversation, and so he loses the duel. Kind of like how Anakin interrupts Mace Windu right before he's going to kill Palpatine. That also ends up getting him killed as well. That's not the only reference to Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith. There's another scene where we see Erin. That's Cad's girl. She's stuck on the ship they've taken to the city. And while Cad Bane is causing ruckus, Erin sees a burning building far off in the distance, just like how Padme sees the Jedi Temple in flames after Order 66. Erin, like Padme, is actually pregnant with Cad Bane's child, although Cad doesn't really know about this. Now, in that exchange where Cad kills the Marshal actually misses his shot and clips Erin in the shoulder. This forces Bane to stay a little longer than he needs to, and he's quickly surrounded by Nero and several other police droids. Instead of standing down, though, and hearing the pleas of his wounded girlfriend, Cad decides to stand and fight his way out of this no-win situation. This reminds me a lot of when Anakin turns away from Padme on Mustafar. She's offering Anakin a way out of all of this craziness, out of the Sith. She offers to just run away with him so that the two could raise their kids on a far-off planet, far away from all of this politics and crazy battle between the Sith and the Jedi. Sure, we wouldn't have gotten the story of Star Wars if this had happened, but it probably would have been better for these two if they had taken that route. Cad also makes a very similar choice. Of course, he doesn't know that Erin is pregnant, but he also doesn't really give her a chance to let him know. He's too caught up in vengeance, in hatred and fear, just like Anakin, and that's a shame, because he never realizes that Erin is pregnant with his son. You know, being a father changes you. And I think it might have changed Bane as well. He still would have gone to jail, of course, for what he did, but, you know, maybe afterwards he could have reconnected with Erin and raised their child together. He would have went in a different direction for the rest of his life. And I think it would have been a much better life than the one he has, which ends on Tatooine lying on his back in a pool of his own blood. Because as we've established before, Bane is kind of a victim of circumstance, right? From a very young age, who's never really given a chance to do anything else but be a criminal. The real problem is once he got pulled into Laszlo's gang, the crimes, the killings, they all started piling up. The more you do these horrible things, the more you normalize these types of behavior, and then the more lost you become. Everything we do in life, especially extreme things, they change the chemistry in our brain and how it's connected. You know, we tend to try to adjust to whatever we're doing. That's how the brain works. And criminals like Bane and Aaron Laszlo, they don't necessarily see themselves as evil. You know, bad, violent, yes, but not evil. And that's because they live with a very different view of the world, a very different code that paints a very cynical picture on how things work. In a lot of ways, you know, criminals like these guys often don't have other opportunities to make money, and so they just try to take things for themselves. You can talk about like larger imbalances and inequality in the Republic and Empire's economic structure, but you know, at the end of the day, this is just how they see the world. They see themselves as victims. And this is how they justify all of their illegal actions. I mean, even criminals like Bane have their codes and moral values. They're not completely mindless animals. If anything, judging by how Laszlo risks his life to rescue Bane during their first little mission, it shows us that there is a bit of honor amongst some thieves. But no matter how hardwired Bane is to be a killer and a criminal, again, when you have a kid, it kind of changes everything. You know, when you look at that little potato in your arms, your priorities change. I mean, parental instincts kick in. That's a real thing. It's a genetic thing. Children are something that you're going to want to naturally protect, to nurture, to guide. If your moral centers don't guide you towards this direction, then your ego will. I mean, this is your kid. I don't know if having a child would force Bane to leave his profession, but it would definitely change how he operates. Unfortunately, that's not what happens. You know, Aaron betrays Cad when the police surround them, so he tosses out his blaster to the cops in a desperate last attempt to save both of their lives. And, you know, Dad calls her a traitor in the same way that Anakin believes that Padme's been sleeping with Obi-Wan, I think. Now, years later, when Cad Bane gets out of prison, he comes back to Duros to confront Nero, who is now the marshal in this town. Cad Bane, as usual, is driven by revenge. He's blinded by his hatred. By the way, did anyone find, like, law enforcement on Duros kind of weird? I mean, this is, like, a pretty advanced, big, built-up city. But why is it that whenever Cad Bane comes back to town to create chaos, the police response is to, like, have a high-noon duel in the middle of the street? What's going on? Like, what happened to police procedure? They could have arrested him at the spaceport. This is dumb policing. Anyway, in the final showdown between Cad Bane and Nero, a new character appears, a small blue Duros boy by the name of Isaac. He's actually Aaron and Cad's son. But Nero has been raising the boy for quite some time, and, you know, Isaac views him as his father. Isaac unfortunately witnesses the duel between Cad and Nero. Nero takes 2 shots directly to the chest, which sends Isaac running towards his fallen father. In that moment, Cad looks at the young boy and finally sees his own features, his own eyes. That's when things connect for him. If you take a look, Bane actually tries to reach out a little towards the young boy. For a split second, there's a longing there for him to know his child, which is, you know, it's a very common thing for fathers to feel when they meet their son for the first time. But like every other emotion he's used to having, Bane quickly steels himself and just turns around and walks away, showing us the coldness, the lack of empathy that would help him become one of the most ruthless bounty hunters in the galaxy. He will become powerful one day. He will become infamous, and he'll also become rich. But he'll also be alone. And that's probably the worst fate of them all. Well, guys, I hope you enjoyed our coverage of Tales of the Underworld. If you haven't seen it, I recommend you guys check it out. These are not long shows in any way. They're like 45 minutes each, split into 3 15-minute episodes, which kind of isn't necessary, to be honest with you. But yeah, great little easy to watch shows. If you're a fan of the Clone Wars, definitely recommend you check it out. Anyway, as usual, don't forget to subscribe, hit that notification button down below so you don't miss out on the rest of our awesome content. My name is Alan, reminding you that my allegiance is to the Republic, to democracy. I'll see you next time.